speaking of being shocked or not shocked, Charlie, did you reach a point at which you just sort of got used to the things that you were going to be asked to do, perhaps in the season 1 corpse-adjacent sex scene?
Yeah, I mean, it all makes perfect sense to me, though. And I don't know if that means I'm a lunatic, but I never, you know, it all just always seems very, very organic. You know, as kind of outlandish as some of the things that we end up doing are, it's always comes, I always feel like it's very, very rooted in the reality that Kurt's created for us. And I never feel, I have to stretch myself emotionally to get to some of those places that, you know, Kurt wants us to get to as an actor, but I never have to stretch my mind to logic what we're actually doing.
I mean, are these characters any harder to leave at the office than some other roles you've played, you know, an undeclared or married with children or something like that?
This is easier for me than those. I don't know why, but maybe I'm just a criminal at heart. I just really, I don't know, I really just dig what Kurt's doing, and really, I feel like it tracks from moment to moment beautifully, and I never really find myself questioning. You know, there was some questioning to begin with, just to figure out exactly who this guy was, and once it was off on that journey, it really just kind of materializes in in a nice way.
Now, Kurt, when I said I was going to do this panel, I asked my readers if there were things they wanted to know about the show, and the #1 question by far is, when are we going to find out about the homeless girl who keeps running into Jax and Gemma and what her story is? What can you tell us about her?
I'll tell you the same thing I tell the network every time they ask, is that she is who she is and she says what she says. That's all I got.
That's enlightening.
No.
Okay, are the Sons going to go to Ireland this season in search of Abel?
Yeah, I don't, you know, we're playing 4 episodes that take place in Belfast, and I sort of put that information out a while back. And I don't want to give out too many details in terms of why we're there and what's going to happen while we're there, but you know, I always knew that the IRA was an important component in the history of the Sons. That was how they got into gun running, and ultimately had the sense that I wanted to go there probably in season 3. So it's been a blast for me to sort of have, you know, talked about, you know, I remember talking to John Landgraf about this, you know, before I think right after we shot the pilot, you know, and so it was fun for me to sort of, you know, have that sort of come alive this season and actually go there. You know, we sent the 2nd unit there for about 2 weeks to shoot, you know, a lot of the bike sequence and a lot of the establishing shots and things like that. So.
Well, I mean, speaking of the club's history, is there a point at which we might either learn more about it or even maybe get to see it in the flashback? You know, young John, young Clay.
I'm not on this show. I mean, flashbacks obviously work on other shows, and but I'd never do a flashback on this show just because I feel like it would pull us out of the show. But we do, through character and through a story arc this season, we do learn a lot more about John Teller and the history of him.
And one of my readers wondered, Big Otto has suffered quite a bit. He's lost now a second eye, lost his wife, all of that. And they wondered if that was in any way you doing some sort of psychic penance for what had been done to Gemma on the screen.
Oh, wow. No, you know, I just like spending time in the makeup chair, is really the truth. No, you know, to me, it's important for me, you know, to have a character that's in prison because it's so much a part of the life, and you know, for me, it was more about, you know, the kind of the horrible thing that he did to Stahl. Was, you know, that, you know, and one of the things I try to do on the show so that the violence doesn't feel as gratuitous or isn't as gratuitous is that the idea that it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Like when you do bad shit to people, you know, consequences are bad shit's going to happen to you. So, and bad things have happened to others.
Charlie and Ron, I'm wondering sort of how having learned to ride the bikes helps you connect with the characters, and as you've gotten better over time, has that maybe made you understand Jax and Clay a little bit more?
Yes. It was funny though, I was just talking to somebody, they asked me how I kind of got into character every day for this guy. You know, on this show we shoot so many hours a day, and just constantly, and at the weekends preparing, you know, I worked out once, I usually average somewhere between 85 and 100 hours a week I work. So it's much more a question of trying to remember who I am than try to figure out who Jax is day to day, because I just live as him far more than I live as myself. And riding a bike is definitely a part of that. I mean, I got a bike last, when did we get our bikes? Last spring? No, we were still shooting. It must have been towards the end of the year. Like September? Yeah, somewhere in September, something like that. And since then I put 6,500 miles on my bike and less than 100 miles on my car. So it's really become pretty much my exclusive mode of transportation. And getting on the bike every morning, I mean, I have a nice fast ride to work every day, and by the time I get there, I am Jax, you know? What about you, Kurt?
I still like my Mercedes. It's got 4 doors. I can go in any one of them I want. I can go out any one I want.
Cheer up!
I love my Bose speakers. I like that I can text and light my cigar all at the same time.
Well, I think we're just about ready for some audience questions if people want to line up, and while they're doing that, I'm just wondering, Kurt, one of the other big shocking things that happened at the end of the season is that Half-Sack, the prospect, is murdered. Will the club be getting a new prospect?
Yeah, we bring on actually 3 prospects this season. Halfway through the season, we bring them in.
Okay. Yeah. So we're going to see a little bit more about how somebody...
Yeah, I think, I mean, ultimately, I think what ended up happening with Johnny is that, you know, it was difficult for me to bring him in the loop in terms of stories, because as a prospect, he was outside, you know. And rather than bringing on a main character that's another prospect, you know, I hired these 3 great actors, and you know, it's a much smaller. They're used much more sparingly, yeah. But I do think you get a sense of more having the 3 of them. You get a sense of what it's like to be a prospect, and it's not a fun journey.
Okay. So do we have some audience questions?
Yep. So, last season, Darth Sobel got away from the rebels, Gemma took off to find Yoda, and Abel got taken away by the Irish Boba Fett. Was Empire Strikes Back at all an influence in season 2?
We must be at Comic-Con.
It was obviously an influence on you.
It's time to go home. I just want to say this is my first time here, and I'm so excited to see this many people in the seats.
Hi, my question is actually if Jax and Clay in this season are going to come closer together or become more divided.